Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, a show where we discuss living as a leader worth following, leading others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for future generations. My name is Jimmy Gonzalez Jr., a learning and development professional and leadership coach, sitting down with my co-host Anthony Devon Watts Jr., an expert contact center leader that has effectively led and developed dynamic teams with high motivation. Together, we have over 30 years experience in the corporate game. Join us as we discuss our growth as leaders, share the lessons we've learned, and interview others to see how their leadership style was shaped as they were mentored by adversity. Hello there, legacy leaders. Welcome to another episode. This is episode number 12 and session number 3 for our Mentored by Adversity series. And we have a wonderful guest with us today. We have Daylyn Perez. She is senior recruiter for VHB and also co-founder of the Professional Pantry.
Nice.
Yes. I think this is a tagline. This is what I found as I was doing some research. Helping professionals cut through the competition so they land the job they love. Boom. Is that correct? Good. There you go. I like it. So we're going to get into a really good conversation for our folks that have been listening. We've been going through this series for the last few weeks now, talking about building high-performing teams, assessments and tools that you can use to analyze your team and strengths and find out gaps. And then as a hiring manager, what you should be looking for and kind of some strategies throughout the hiring process to make sure that you're filling those gaps and really making sure that you're getting the right type of person or people onto your team, because that is such a crucial element when we're talking about team building in general. And before we jump into that, 3 things really quick. Step number 1, please subscribe. Subscribe to the podcast. Yes, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure that you hit the little alert button and give us some likes. Step number 2, we said this last time, and I'm going to keep asking, make sure that you take a screenshot. So click, whether you're watching us on YouTube or you're listening to the podcast, take a screenshot of that, and then go ahead and post that onto Instagram. Make sure that you tag us at Legacy Leadership. You can definitely tag Devon at Leadership Docent, and then also tag myself at Coach_Jimmie G Jr. I would appreciate that. And then, Dave, what's your handle for? There she goes. She's taking it right now. Yes.
Gotta take the screenshot. For Instagram, it's Professional Pantry. And then you can find me on Facebook as Daylyn Perez.
Awesome. I'm going to follow suit.
Boom.
There it is.
I don't think I was ready for that, but that's okay.
I'll take another one towards the end, because for our listeners, I'm going to make sure that we plug all of those requests at the end of the episode as well. So, and then last thing, step number 3 is share. Share with your friends, share with your family, share with other leaders that you feel would gain a lot out of listening to our conversations, especially, again, to this series and this episode, which is our 3rd installment of Mentored by Adversity. So share with your folks. Let them know what's good when it comes to the Legacy and Leadership podcast. We would appreciate that very, very much.
Absolutely.
So we're excited, Day, to have you with us.
Yeah, we are.
And how are you doing today, ma'am?
Pretty damn good.
That's what I like to hear.
I love it.
I'm feeling good too. D, I think you're doing all right. Prior to us hitting record, you had a number of stories that you were telling us.
Yeah. I'll leave it at this, because I don't want to get into too many details as the case is still under litigation. Right? So at the advisement of my lawyer, I can't say too much. But no, seriously though, I am continuing my Cold War in this hot Florida weather. So, but all of that stuff, the fender bender stuff aside, man, I'm in good spirits, man. I'm feeling really, really good. I've been kind of sharing with you that over, I guess, these past couple of weeks, we've been building up to bring in our leadership team back on site for the very first time since, we sent everybody home. And yeah, man, it went off pretty well. It was good to kind of get a buzz back in the facility. Like, kind of that eerie quietness is kind of hard to work in, especially if you're used to like kind of contact centers and kind of that hum.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to get the leaders back and start them up on their leadership development training. And so, yeah, man, I think kind of all of those things have me in exceptionally high spirits today, man. So I'm feeling energized and I'm excited to learn, especially given we've kind of been, like you said, laying this foundation, talking about building a team. And that hits near and dear to my heart because I've been going through those steps here recently with my new squad. And I know we gave the interviewer perspective to some extent on the last episode that we're going to be able to share dropping tomorrow. So by the time you guys listen to this, just go back and listen to that other episode. And so it'll be really good to just get Dave's perspective, from the interviewee, I guess perspective, and, just prepping people for, what it takes to really, set yourself apart from everybody else. And I think more importantly than just kind of the functional stuff, it's also the encouragement people get from just hearing other people's stories. Like we kind of talked about that a little bit before we got on here, Day. Just the power in stories and the power in passing on those stories and the things that we as leaders sometimes feel like, we should kind of guard from the world and not share, right, to hide, right, are really the things that are our power stories and help encourage and motivate and inspire other individuals. And so I always walk away from these MBA sessions like kind of inspired and learning something new And so I'm looking forward to the same thing today.
Me as well. So I'm happy to say that I have a project I've been kind of working on. A Day, you may appreciate this. One of our recruiters was asking for assistance in creating a front-end learning content, a micro learning piece for individuals who are interested in one of the kind of frontline spots that we have for our field marketing team. So I was able to get that completed and send it off to them today. So I've been working on that for a couple of weeks. Probably took me a lot longer than I had expected, but was happy to get that taken care of. So far, I've gotten some good feedback. I'm waiting to hear back from a couple of more folks. I might have to make a couple of tweaks. But that's part of some of the work that I do as a learning development professional. While I definitely create content for training purposes, I also help out marketing and recruiting as well. 'Cause that's always important, right? Getting the right type of people and making sure. One of the reasons we decided to do this is we want to make sure that they had a really, really good understanding of what the job entails. So we're trying to give us the best as possible a realistic job preview with this 5-minute animated video that we've put together. So. But they seem to appreciate it so far, so we'll see if we'll get some benefit out of it as we do new hire surveys and things like that to really determine the impact of it.
Yeah. Nice.
So that was the bulk of the work that I did today. And again, it's always nice, right, when you're able to check something off of the to-do list. So happy about that. As I was kind of doing some research, you have about 10 years or so of experience in human resources and recruiting. And again, you're currently a senior recruiter for VHB and co-founder of the Professional Pantry. I am interested to hear, kind of your story and how you got started with the Professional Pantry, because I believe that's something that you started within the last maybe 4 to 5 months or so.
Okay. That's correct. Yep. So, obviously I've been in the space for almost a decade here, and I've recruited for various industries, and, I've always been helping, hiring leaders in companies. And so often what people don't see is that recruiters are talking to candidates, which are humans, and they have stories and they have families, and you build bonds with them in such a short period of time, or at least I do, because maybe that's the empath in me. But I build these bonds with people, and then I'm rooting for them, but then they end up either one, not getting the job for numerous reasons, whether they just don't know how to sell themselves, they say the wrong things, or maybe they just don't have a good resume and it's not representative of their skills and experience and their impact. And so I think it was something that was tugging at my heart. I've always wanted to start my own thing and be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what. And so it was one of those things that it was like a light bulb moment, like, duh, like, these people need help, and like there's no one there to champion them. And so it was like, well, I know all the secrets. I'm the one that's with hiring managers making these decisions and screening people and saying yes or no, move to the next step. And so it was like, okay, it's time. I need to be the people's champion, and I really need to be on the other side of the table to essentially, help everyone get to where they need to be. And I wish I had that when I was, starting my career. I had to piece together things from all over the internet. Nowadays we have podcasts and we have YouTube and we have all these things you can pull from, but back then I didn't. And even now, people don't really know where to go for this information. And so, if I can help someone in their journey to kind of help them progress in their development as a professional, why not?
I like that. The people's champ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
The Rock, baby.
Dave Perez getting it done for the folks. No, but I appreciate that, and I've been very transparent. While I've find myself still doing the best that I can at adding value in my current role, in my current situation. I was just looking. It's always good to make sure that your resume is updated, especially with what we've been going through over the last several months. With COVID and how that's impacted so much. Even obviously impacted Devon as he was working with us, and then was furloughed and found himself very quickly though. My man's blessed and just a talent to get on board with another company sooner rather than later. So we were happy about that. But I reached out to you as I found you on LinkedIn and made that connection and was just trying to get some advice on, again, tips, right? We all need that, no matter how long we've been in the game as an employee and even as a hiring manager, and knowing what you're looking for and looking at resumes. Things have changed a lot, over the last couple of years, 5 years, so it's important to, while there are so many resources out there, to seek professional help and folks, again, who this is what they've been specializing in for a decade or longer, to be able to get some of that additional support, again, to help you land a job that you really love, right? Mm-hmm. Not just a job, but really that spot that you're passionate about, you have the right type of skill set, and you're very comfortable with the organization, with the leadership, with their values, hopefully the benefits, and all of those things just come together. So definitely commend you for the work that you're doing. And even, the heart and the will to take that step during, COVID and again, everything that we've been going through, as tough as it's been.
For sure.
It's been a very tough market, so I applaud a few folks that I've met recently, just entrepreneurs that have taken that step in these difficult times. Yet in these difficult times, it's really when people need those type of services the most.
No, 100%.
Absolutely.
100%. And actually, I love that you touched on that, Jimmie, because I think it's twofold, right? Not only, just through some of what you're sharing, Day, and kind of what motivated you to kind of take that leap of faith, you're showing the humanity in the TA space. I think oftentimes just people have this misconception that, the people they're sending these resumes off to, right, they're just sitting there and no, not good enough. No, all right, you're good enough, right? But for you to be able to at least connect with these individuals and understand their story and the humanity, and to be able to say, well, what can I contribute, right? What can I contribute given everything that I've learned, right, to help these people, and like you said, championing these people. And even though this opportunity may not have worked out for them, right, that doesn't have to be the end of this relationship and this investment. And then to then find the courage, right? So you have the empathy to be able to know that there's a need for that service, but then to find the courage to step out on faith, when everything right now in the environment, the climate says, hey, caution, don't take any risk, right? Be hyper conservative. But for you to look into that and say, no, this is actually the perfect opportunity, the perfect timing for me to do that, I think is super telling, tells a lot about you. And I'm really interested to kind of hear the experiences you've had that have helped shape that view where you would have that courage and be able to step out on faith, even if the odds are saying, hey, now's not the right time.
Absolutely.
So let's jump into some of these questions. You ready, Day?
Dun, dun, dun.
So we've given some background on you professionally and the things that you've done. Tell us a little bit about yourself personally, and then how do you really balance your professional and your personal life and the demands of both of those?
Oof, it's like the $1 million question, right? Work-life balance is what everybody says, and now it's going to like work-life. What is it? A transition or something like that? I forgot. Or integration.
Yeah,
That's what they're saying now. That's like the new word. It's integration. But it's probably one of the hardest things that I think humans in general master is the personal and professional demands of I want to build a business or I want to build my career, but I also have a family or I have a significant other or I have kids. And it's like, how do you juggle the two? And I don't think there's a perfect answer for that. I think it's one of those things that it's never a set it and forget it type thing. You constantly have to recheck yourself. It's one of those things that thankfully I have a significant other that I've been with for 10 years, and we're kind of like each other's checks and balances. Where if I'm going a little too overboard in my professional demands, then he's quick to say, hey, what's going on here? Like, you're not getting your you time. We're not getting our time. And I think that's where he does a really good job of keeping me in check and like, oh, okay, I got to step back. Like the work will be there. But that quality time of being with your human is more important. And I know when I need it because I start to get very temperamatic and like irritated and annoyed and stuff like that. So that's when I know I'm like, okay, I need it. Shut it down. Shut it down. But yeah, I mean, just I think it's again constantly working at it and constantly improving your organization skills, your time efficiency. All that stuff plays a part, and it's something that I don't think you ever perfect, but you constantly try to.
No, well said, well said. It's funny because there's a similar beat, right, to what she's sharing and what we've heard in prior NBA sessions, just around the fact that you, like you said, you can't set it and forget it. You have to recalibrate, you have to reassess. And I think the one thing that you touched on, which has kind of been a thread, even through these last episodes, even though it hasn't been intentional, is the importance of your support systems and the importance of just having people that can pour into you and kind of lean on and say, hey, you're unbalanced, right? You need somebody that you can be able to confide in, and whether that is your significant others and, your friends or, other coworkers, other individuals who you built a relationship with and trust, and that can kind of speak honestly to you and say, hey, Day or Jimmy or Devon, like, yeah, you're acting real Aggie right now. Like, I can tell you need some you time because, like, you're real short tempered, and your patience is not there. Your empathy is not there. Like, you're a little bit off. You need you, right? You need to shut it down. You need people that can comfortably have that honest conversation with you, and you trust that, hey, you know what, you're absolutely right. Like, you have a good sense of when I'm balanced and when I'm not. And if you're telling me off balance, I got to be off balance. So let me shut it down.
And you know it. You secretly know that you're off balance. But
True.
You just feel like you could keep going, and it's like, no, you can't.
That is true too.
And you know what? And for people who may not always have that significant other, like your counselor, your therapist, your coach, whoever it is, like there should always be somebody in your life that can be like, slow it down.
Yeah, that was some of the takeaways. Very much reminded me of some of the things that Xavier said in our first NBA session. But checks and balances, and having that support system, but you have to know yourself. Like you said, Devon, really recalibrate. And it is always about making those slight adjustments. I think about, you mentioned time management, you mentioned organizational skills. I think of how I've tweaked all of those things, over the years, because as the dynamics change in your life, you can't necessarily continue to use the same tactics or systems. Maybe the fundamentals are going to be there, but I know I need to tweak things as I go along. And it's funny too, I can see how on both sides, as an individual who was blessed to not get furloughed and working and working hard and trying to make sure, again, that you're adding value, putting so much time and effort into that. I could also see somebody who maybe is not employed right now, and they're putting all their time and effort because it's so critical to get that next opportunity. But on both of those occasions, you can really run yourself down and stress yourself out if you don't have the support system, or if you're not really paying attention to yourself. And again, making sure, okay, I need to slow down a little bit. I need some me time, or I need some time with my family to make sure that I'm pouring back into myself. You can't serve somebody else from an empty plate, right? So always taking care of yourself is highly important.
Bar.
Absolutely, because that spectrum of literally going from, okay, it's all right, it's a tough time, I'm gonna find something, to eventually you have nothing in your cup left and it goes into desperation mode. And then now you're not putting your best foot forward. So now the other side feels that.
Mm-hmm.
They feel the desperation. They feel it in the outreach. They feel it in the interviews. They feel it in everything. So you have to, just have faith. It's going to happen. You know what you bring to the table. So always keep your cup
Yeah.
full.
Good word. Good word. So this is Legacy and Leadership, and our whole goal is to help folks, give them tips and strategies and inspiration to become a leader worth following, and then how do you take that and start to develop others to do the same, right? And then in all of that, leaving a legacy. So we want to know about your leadership, right? So what was a moment that you knew or you felt that leadership was your calling and kind of part of your purpose and what you bring to the world?
So I'm going to get geeky on y'all first.
We like geeky too, yeah.
I was going to say, we're always game.
So I think when people, there's almost like this misconception about leadership, right? It's people thinking that leadership means you're like the hero or like you're the front face center person. And so think of it as Batman, right? People always think Batman is like the leader, the hero, right? But really, and if you learn about like story branding, like in marketing, you actually learn who the guide is. And that guide was Alfred. Not Robin, it was Alfred. And Alfred was the one that was like the true leader, the one that was like mentoring Batman, keeping him like his mentality and his like mindset well, pushed him where he needed to be pushed, say the right things to really guide him to his purpose. And so that's the way I look at leadership is like I would say early on, right? It always goes back to your childhood. And for me, it was middle school. So I was always heavily involved in like dance team, cheerleading, school organizations. And anytime I was involved in anything, I wasn't necessarily the captain, but I was always, whoever the captain was, like the right-hand man. And so I was always the one to be like, okay, so what is it going to take to influence the captain? And then what is it going to take so that whatever the captain wants to do, I can make sure everyone else has the buy-in. And so that's where I think very early on, I kind of knew, and maybe that's a Libra in me because we're the balance scale. And so I can always see the both sides of the spectrum. And so for me, it was always a really neat way of like, okay, I see their agenda. How do I get that to like come together? And so that is where my leadership kind of took place, is that as I grew older and older and actually started working in professional settings, I quickly realized that I can learn so much from the captain, but I can also influence the captain a lot, and that in itself is leadership. It doesn't always have to be vertical. You can definitely lead horizontally. So that was my moment for me.
No, there's a lot of great nuggets in there. I'll let you go ahead and touch on it, Jimmy, before I share my thoughts.
No, I was just going to say, we've talked about that, right? It's not about the title necessarily or the position that you hold. It is about the influence. It is about those individuals that you were a support to. You had to be able to build trust. And I think, within Devon and myself in our relationship, there was a time where he reported to me back in the day, and then within the recent years, really I reported to him. And while I was a leader of my team and doing things within the call center that we worked in, I did my best between Devon and our other boss that had moved on to try to be that support, right? And how can I help influence and help with their initiatives and the things that they're trying to do? So leadership comes in all different roles and positions, but I appreciate that analogy too about Alfred and Batman. That's a good one.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually thinking, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna steal that. That's gonna get told to somebody.
But check this. Check how this works. So the viewers will be able to see from this camera I have behind me. If you know me, you know that my favorite superheroes are Superman and Wolverine. But I could not help but buy this at the checkout.
A Batmobile.
Yes, at one of the pharmacy stores the other day. So shout out. Yes, exactly. Shout out to Batman.
Absolutely, shout out Batman. But I love that because I think it really puts in perspective an easy way to understand the importance of influence, right? And like you kind of framed it, Day. I think going into it, especially early on as leaders, you kind of think, okay, I'm going to be the hero, the one that affects change. I'm going to be the Dark Knight. I'm going to be the guy that was born in darkness, right? All that stuff. And then when you really get into it, you realize that the real power is in the ability to influence, to shape, the mold, to inspire, to develop, to encourage, to watch people grow and go off and do some greater things. And so I can see how after years of experience and leadership, being able to look at these traditional hero stories and have that new lens on it to say, well, who is the real leader in Batman, right? Well, it was Alfred the entire time. And, Alfred was, like you said, that voice of reason, that person that's pushing him, guiding him, coaching him up, framing his worldview, right? So that he can go out and be the best Batman or superhero that he can be. And so I love that. I think, Jimmie, you and I have always kind of talked about the importance of, as a every king needs counsel and stuff like that, right? And just hearing her kind of share that story, I'm reminded of well, where does the seat of power really lie in the kingdom, right? And it's usually the king's hand more so than the king. The person that has the ear of the king is really the most powerful individual in the kingdom. And so I think that that just kind of doubles down on some of the themes that we've been sharing and makes it really easy for people to digest. But I love that. So like I said, I'm definitely that one's getting taken and it's going to be shared.
Yes.
Because actually today when we brought folks back, the first 30 minutes or so we're touching on different leadership pillars. So I was able to kind of talk to them about employee engagement and culture and organizational behavior and developing your team and just kind of the mindset of a leader, right? To kind of set the stage for the other things that they're going to learn. And so I harped on quite a bit about influence, but I think being able to tie that story into it will really help drive it home for folks. So I really appreciate that.
That's good. So when we talk about Alfred, who has been the Alfred in your life, Day? Who are the people that have helped you grow as a leader? And what did they teach you?
Gosh, there's different guides at different points of my life, right? I will say every single boss I've ever had, I feel like I've learned something. But if I had to pick one person, hands down, it's my dad. It's my dad. I'm a daddy's girl.
No, nothing wrong with that. We've definitely talked a lot about our fathers and the influence that they've had in our lives as mentors and guides for us. So what are some of the nuggets that you've picked up from your dad over the years that you keep with you to this day?
Can I go into a story time mode?
Absolutely. No, we want to hear stories. Yeah.
So, because you have to hear the context to see why this man is like such on a pedestal for me. But so I'm going to take it back to when my dad was growing up before I ever existed, right? So my father is one of 7 children. And he grew up in a small 1-bedroom house, wooden house with an aluminum roof and an outhouse off the side of a cliff. He had one pair of shoes that the government provided that he could only wear to go to church or to school. So if he wasn't in those shoes, he was either barefoot or in flip-flops. So imagine in Puerto Rico, it's mad jungles everywhere. Like it's not San Juan, it's not the touristy areas of Puerto Rico. This is like in the boonies, in like the mountains, like deep jungle. And so this guy would literally just live his life barefoot practically. So anyways, obviously they're in a lot of poverty and they didn't have much. And so no one in where they lived had money and never went anywhere with their lives. And so my father was like, okay, like I got to do something to change this. Like I don't want this life. I don't want this. I want something different. And so his ticket out of poverty was at the time to sign up to go into the military. So he didn't know any English. All he spoke was Spanish. So he signed up for the military. They shipped him off to Germany.
Wow.
So he didn't know English or German. And the man had to learn it all. So he's literally like has no idea what they're saying to him, nothing. They call line duty or whatever where you have to run from your barracks to line up. The man doesn't even know how to open up a lock, like for the lockers to get his stuff. He's completely confused. He has no understanding why they're all running outside. Wow. He's waving to them outside as they were saying, Perez, like, right, Perez, where's Perez? Perez is upstairs trying to figure out a locker. So it was a long journey for my father, but it was that sacrifice of like, I don't know the language. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm getting out of poverty and I'm going to figure it out. And so they put him in school. He learned his English. He learned his German. And he was able to survive. And eventually, he met my mom. They got married, they had my brother, eventually I came along, and he is literally like the first example of his family to showcase, I got out, so can you. You got to sacrifice. And so for me, that always stuck out. Like, I just love hearing like their story, just because for me, it's like anytime you think of something scary, you're like, oh, but hell, if he can do it, I can. Like, damn, like, so anytime I think about something that's scary, I'm just like, okay, but he literally went to another country and didn't know anything and figured it out. So I can do it. And so that for me is where the majority of all my work ethic, motivation, determination, all that is literally ingrained in me because of him.
Wow. I could absolutely see why that would be the case, man. That's an impressive story. So many nuggets in there, and it sounds like it's it's more his actions and what he's overcome that has been the lesson, more so than the kind of sitting you down on the knee and saying, hey, this is what you got to do. And I think there's just a hell of a lot of value in that, right? Because you can always pull from those experiences, like you said, as an anchor to say, okay, well, if I think the situation that I'm in is a challenging one, it's difficult one, right? There's fear, right? What can I learn from his lesson and how he faced fear and how he stepped out on faith? I mean, held to, not know the language, to end up in Germany, to, then have to learn 2 languages. And it's not like you have somebody to pull from. And, Jimmie and I have kind of talked about that as well, because, there's been things that we've been able to pick up from our parents, our fathers along the way, that we've learned about leadership and about their story that we can draw from inspiration. And obviously the hope for them, like your father probably has the hope for you, right, is that the next generation goes off and, they conquer uncharted territories. They find their Germany, right, that they got to, kind of drop into and learn from. And we've been blessed enough to be able to see those things. So there's situations that I go into or Jimmie's going into where you don't have a resource to pull from. There's no story I can reference to say, well, how do I navigate this, right? And you just got to figure it the hell out. But the thing that keeps me going is that I know at some point, my kids will be able to pull from this story the same way I pull from my father's story and use it as a lesson and use it as a resource. And so it's awesome to hear how those seeds of sacrifice that your father planted so many years ago have bloomed into stories of just success and inspiration and motivation, and then they've continued to bear fruit in future generations. There's so much stuff that you've been able to accomplish and step out on faith about because of a decision that he made, as a young man, saying, hey, I just don't want this life anymore. And I don't know what what I'm about to get into or what the rest of the world has to offer, but I know what this has to offer, and this isn't it for me. And that continues to bear fruit. I think this is just, it's so inspirational, for sure.
Yeah. I think about my mom. We were talking about the fact that I was born in New York, and my mom is definitely a leader in her own right. And she had similar thoughts about not wanting my son to be raised, in this area and wanting something better. And while everybody may have thought she was crazy for, kind of saying, all right, I'm just going to make this decision and move, from New York all the way to Florida, she did. And what I like what you said as well, Devon, it's not always about the nuggets or the verbal communication and some of those talks that you may have with your parents, but as kids too, we learn a lot from just observing, and sometimes you as an adult now, you don't necessarily recognize it. You really just stop it and reflect back on those moments and those decisions. And I know how impactful it was for myself and for my life, my mom making that decision, and again just having the faith, having the courage, and stepping out when the odds were definitely against her and against your father in that scenario that you just explained to us.
Yeah. Sometimes actions speak louder than words, right? My dad never had to sit me down and say, hey, Day, you have to work hard.
Yeah.
You have to do this, and it's gonna suck. He just showed by example. And I remember my dad was a workhorse. And so to a fault, to the point where I think I learned that very early on. I was that workhorse, and I was like, oh, wait, boundaries.
Yeah.
But yeah, he ingrained that in me because that's what I saw. So what I saw is what I did.
That's good.
It's powerful. It's powerful, powerful, powerful. So you talked about the impact that your father had on you and the story that he's, the examples he left, right? The examples he set, and how you pull on those today. And I guess, I'm a little bit curious because you even alluded to this when you were talking about, that grind, turning into desperation and people sensing that, and it's palpable, right? And I think, for me, I can tell being able to be rooted and understand, okay, hey, it's going to be okay. I'm going to have faith is usually the sign of somebody that has gone through adversity and been able to overcome adversity, right? You don't just pull from that well out of nowhere, right? You've had to do some things and overcome it. And so, given what the examples your father has set for you, and, just kind of, what you're sharing in terms of words of encouragement for people that are going through the grind. I'm curious if, you can share with us a time where you've had to overcome adversity, right, and face adversity, and to develop kind of that well of resolve that you talk about pulling from.
Sure. So this is actually a story that the first time I told it to someone that wasn't close to me was actually, believe it or not, in an interview. I had an interview with an owner of a recruiting firm in Nashville who came down and flew to meet me, and we just went out to eat. That was my interview, right? It was out to eat at a restaurant. So you never know the types of interviews you're going to have. But I could tell that he was that kind of, his vibe was definitely the type of vibe that wanted to hear, like, not surface level stuff, but beneath that. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, millennials or young professionals get, dubbed the, like, entitled, or that we haven't gone through anything. Mm-hmm. And so, like, he always asked a question in his interview, like, what's the hardest thing you've ever had to overcome? Mm-hmm. And he was expecting, the majority of the answers are like, well, like, college was tough and I didn't know, like, what major I wanted to do. Like, he was expecting one of those types of answers. And then when I got real, he was like, oh shit, you're hired. But to tell my story, so once I graduated high school, and I'll actually kind of before I did that. So the whole reason why we moved from Virginia to Florida was because, unfortunately, my brother got into drugs and became addicted. And it was during the time when, like, ecstasy was like a huge, it was rampant, mm-hmm. like the whole raves world or what have you. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so it started getting really bad. He lost a couple of his friends to overdosing. Mm-hmm. And, it was one of those things where it was just getting out of control. My parents were, like, willing to do anything and everything to, like, just get this back on track. And so that was, like, the dark reason why we moved to Florida. It was, like, for the new life, restart, get away. Mm-hmm. But the surface level is like, oh, Florida's nice and it has great weather.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was that. My brother was struggling with that. So the deal was, we go to Florida. They pay for my brother's tuition to go to school, study anything you want, just stop drugs. And so I'm sugarcoating this, thinking that this all happens really fast, but it doesn't. We all know how addiction works. Mm-hmm. So obviously through the addiction and through what my brother went through and what he put my parents through, unfortunately I went through, right? Because I had to, as the younger sister, looking at how it affected my parents, how it affected me. I had my own abandonment issues because my brother was, like, my world, my hero. And then I felt like all of a sudden abandoned, like, where are you? Mm-hmm. So I had those, like, resentment issues with him. And then my dad, just having heart problems and things. So he was adding to those stresses. And so I developed, I'm a struggling perfectionist. That's what what therapists call it, right? Mm. It's because I don't want to be the burden on anyone else. And so I became this person that everything's okay, right? So I slowly became that person. And as I was becoming that person, then I also was hit with an autoimmune disease, which at the time, 15 years ago, was rare. No one really knew how to treat it. No one really knew what to do with it. But essentially, I looked like a zombie. The autoimmune disease, it's called ITP. You can Google it. It's a long word I can't even pronounce. But at the time, it basically is your body attacks itself, thinking that your platelets, which is the little cells in your blood that allow you to clot. So if you, like, get stabbed, you clot. Well, guess what? If I got stabbed, I would not be able to clot. I would just completely bleed to death. So literally I was internally bleeding. I had bruises in places I could not tell you why I had them. At first my parents were like, "What's going on? Are you getting abused? Like, is something happening? Like, is your boyfriend hitting you?" Like, they
Right.
just didn't know what was going on. Eventually they made me go to the doctor because literally my body was covered in bruises. Bruises. I looked like a zombie. And I was so scared thinking like, what the heck is this? Is this AIDS? Like, do I have AIDS and I don't know it? Like, what's going on? Um, and so when the hematologist came back and he was like, "You have this in ITP, this long name for this autoimmune disease." And I was like, "Okay, well, so now what?" And he's like, "Well, there's no cure." I was like, "Okay, so what do I do?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know. We're going to have to like research. For now, maybe we'll put you on steroids just so that, your platelet counts don't get low. Because if your platelet counts get too low, you get hospitalized because then you're internally bleeding too much, your blood vessels start to burst, and it just gets to be just,
Yeah.
do or die type thing." So they put me on steroids. Steroids, if you have any health problems, you know that steroids is like a short-term
Fix.
band-aid, but it always has really long-term effects that are negative. And it blew me up. I was like swollen, and I didn't feel good. It was terrible, but it was keeping my platelets at least from getting in like the bad zone. And so eventually, I mean, we tried everything, like, how Puerto Ricans are. Well, I don't know, most coaches, right? They try everything under the book. They're like, "Hey, drink this plum
Yep.
juice, this juice, malta," like everything, trying to like, this helps your platelets. No, it doesn't. So here I am, literally a 17, 18-year-old who has this autoimmune disease. I don't know how to fix. Doctors don't know how to fix. I don't, literally, I'm like, am I going to make it to get married? Am I going to make it to have kids? Am I going to make it to even like have a career? Am I going to die before my parents? Like, I'm literally thinking about all this stuff. Um, and so, long story short, the hematologist, after doing tons of research, came back, and mind you, week to week, I'm getting blood drawn, and they're like, "Too low, hospital," or "You're good." But literally, I looked like a crackhead, because I literally had like so much blood drawn every week. And so then it was two options that he came to me with. He said, "Blood dialysis monthly,
Mm.
or I think it might be your spleen that went wrong, and maybe if we remove it, it'll fix it." And I was like, "Okay, so do I need it to live?" And he's like, "No." He says, "You're going to get sick easily. That's where create antibodies. So you're going to have to get booster shots and all this stuff, right?" And I was like, "Okay, but I can still live." He's like, "Yeah." I said, "What's the chances?" He's like, 60-40. Cut me open.
Wow.
I literally said that. I said, "Cut me open." I didn't have to think about it. It was like, "Nope, do it. Take it out." And so we ended up taking it out. And literally the next day after surgery, my platelet counts shot through the roof.
Wow.
And so literally I was back to normal. I didn't need to take steroids, none of that. Now, granted, now I'm autoimmune comprised. So now, I get sick very easily. But now that I maintain a healthy weight, healthy lifestyle, I work out, I eat well, my immune system has gotten better. But up to this, for the last 15 years, like, it's been like highs and lows of getting, like, a normal cold for me is not a normal cold. I will literally get to the point where I need to go to the hospital and things like that. But as far as my platelets, I can clot. I can clot now. But just imagine, like, I did not want to do blood dialysis on a monthly basis. Like,
No.
that just wasn't the life I wanted to live. And, some people might have done that because they're scared of surgery and it wasn't like 100% guarantee. But I was like, "Nope, cut me. If you think that's the issue, get it out." And I think I learned a lot from that, because it was one of those things at the time. I mean, I'm scared shitless, right? I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. You feel very alone because no one understands what you're going through. I would fall asleep at the wheel, not know how I got at places. I was extremely fatigued. I would literally pass out. Like, going through the motions sucked. But now looking back, I can like laugh and talk about it without crying. But back then it was like, I don't know what's happening. And so I think that was like a big moment for me to say, grow up, like, you're mature, like, you have a life to live. Doesn't matter who's doing what addiction, doesn't matter what heart condition your father has, like, you were given this chance. And so if miraculously there's no treatment for this, there's no, you know what I mean, like, there's no cure, and you are kind of cured now, Like, why not?
Mm.
Why can't I just take it head on and use that as like my motivation of like, okay, here, I dodged a bullet.
Wow. It's powerful. That really is. It's crazy because I can see not parallels, but I can see where the example that your father set for you manifested itself, and even in that story, when you talk about the moment where you had to make the decision between monthly dialysis or uh, a a surgery that honestly, the doctor didn't know 100% if it was going to work. It was like 60-40, right? Um, the, your father's thought process or his thinking, his rationale, like I saw in you just through that story, right? Where you're like, well, look, I don't know if this is going to be it. I don't know if this is going to solve. I don't know if this is the solution, but I know for a fact what life I don't want, and I'm willing to take that risk and kind of step out on faith and trust that everything's going to work out. Um, and so I can, wow, I definitely wasn't expecting that story by any stretch of the imagination, but I can just completely understand now that well of resolve that you're able to
Mm.
pull from. I mean, you had to go through so much in such a short amount of time, and there's nuggets in there about um, what what we what we assess adversity or hardship to be versus getting introduced to true hardship, true adversity, right? Yeah, I could imagine that you know going through the health scare that you obviously went through and had to overcome. You're still obviously while you're in a better place, you still have long-term ramifications from that, like you mentioned with the steroids. That very quickly probably put into perspective the, oh, I don't know what lunch table to sit at, thought process you had early on when you made the move from Virginia to Poinciana. So uh, man, I think there's a lot of just really inspirational nuggets to be able to pull from on that one. I don't know what resonated with you, Jimmy.
I mean, you said it, man. It's just simply just the will, determination. I think about, I was just kind of sitting here writing down the things that you mentioned, Day, and um, learning from your dad and what he went through, and I'm sure your mom, and then with your brother and addiction, like you said, those things are powerful within a family, right? And it touches everybody. Especially, I could imagine being the youngest and the baby sister, and having to see that and feeling and hurting and wanting to help your brother, and then how that's affecting your parents. And moving is always tough, especially when you're young and kind of at that age, and then you're going through those things, and then having to go through those changes and moving, and then obviously everything that you've said that you went through, with that autoimmune disease, and the decisions that you had to make along the way, and the I think one of the powerful things too is that nothing is guaranteed, right? And even with science, they may say, oh, 80-90%, but nothing is guaranteed. Yeah, they don't know. And it's having that faith and that resolve to say, well, I know what the options are, and you know what, I'm going to have that faith and step out, and I'd rather this than having to go through that dialysis every month. And again, just kind of at an early age, to processing all of those things, and having to make those decisions. Obviously it had to be tough, but again, it definitely speaks to to the resolve, to the will, the determination that you have as an individual.
And it wasn't all cakes and roses. I will say a lot of times people think that they hold on to faith when something like this happens. And it was actually quite the opposite for me. I actually lost my faith because I was kind of like mad, like,
Mm.
well, why is this happening? You know what I mean? Like, why is it like one thing after another? It's like drug addiction, health issue. Okay, now my dad open heart surgery. It's like, what now? And so for many years, I was actually mad at the man upstairs. And I was like, I don't know about this. But I think as I've gotten older, I've always believed, right? But I think during the time where I wasn't cool with the man upstairs, I still knew there was a higher power. And I knew there was something, whether you're drawing that on energy or nature or yourself, like there's always something that you pull from. And in those dark moments, like whether it's him or something, you're going to pull from something. And I think maybe that was like my father and me, and just like, I'm going to get through it, like no matter what.
Yeah, well, I would say that kind of what you're touching on really is understanding that sometimes there are things that are greater than the situation, right? And being able to connect into that and pull resolve from that when you can't muster it yourself sometimes. Like the circumstances, what you're dealing with, like everything you're facing would tell you, like, nah, this ain't it. There's no point. You lose hope. You start to get desperate, and your mind can go to some dark places. But being able to understand that there's something greater, right? That we serve a purpose for. What you mean to your family, what you mean to your mother, your father, your brother, the others that care about you, being able to connect into that and pull from it. I guess one of the things that I'm kind of curious about, because you shared a term which I had never heard before, but as soon as I heard it, I was like, I don't know. I feel like I can connect with that. I feel like maybe she's talking about me a little bit, right? You said you're a serial perfectionist, a struggling perfectionist,
Yes.
perfectionist, right? And that resonated with me because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, yeah, there's definitely some. I have some of those
A
tendencies.
recovering perfectionist.
Oh.
So that's actually what I wanted to ask you about. Just having gone through what you experienced, and you mentioned that now you're able to better manage just kind of your weight and healthy balance and the whole nine. Do you feel like that situation has fed that struggling perfectionist component of you and giving you something to kind of target that energy towards, or do you feel like the experience has helped kind of I don't know, control that or muddle it, or however you want to phrase it, to put things in perspective and say, well, look, I don't have to be perfect because there's something greater out there. I'm just super curious.
I mean, if you look at, I mean, anybody successful, right? Right, whether it's Kobe or Michael Jordan or this or that, what have you, right? You always hear about like what was their struggle, right? Or what a lot of times people operate from a place of fear or um, something, right, that they operate by. And for me, the perfectionist was a result of, I think it was my outlet. Um, it was a way, it was a protective mechanism. It was, I don't want to show that I'm weak. But that's exactly what perfection is like. It's scared of being weak,
Mm-hmm.
but you are, that's exactly what it is. And again, because my brother was supposed to be the older role model, and I had to kind of flip the script, and now I had to be the old, we're 5 years apart, but I had to kind of be the
Mm-hmm.
older sister per se.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to lead the way and be the example and showcase my parents, like you didn't fail as parents, like it's okay. And so I had to make them proud. And then it became, well, I need to make my teacher proud, or I need to make my boss proud. And, it just kind of kept tumbling. And so I became that like go-to person people came to me for things and kind of looked at me as like the mom, but then no one was there for me, and I didn't have like that person I could go to and just be completely vulnerable and completely distraught with. And so it was really just kind of for so many years of just bottling it in of like everything's perfect, everything's fine, because I didn't want to be the burden on anyone else, because my brother was that burden for many years for my parents, and or health issues were. So I was like, okay, I got to be good. Like I can't stress anybody out, nothing like that. And so it struggled for many years. I actually struggled with building friendships and keeping them for that reason, because if things got too close, I was like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to like
Mm-hmm.
the trust. And so I struggled with keeping friendships. um I couldn't connect with people my age, and I think maybe it's because of everything I went through. People at my age just didn't have that experience, and
Mm-hmm.
so I found myself being always the youngest person in the room, whether that
Mm-hmm.
be I was 17 in college. I was always in an office setting. I was the youngest person, like by like 10 years
Mm-hmm.
in many cases. So it's like not only am I female in a heavily male dominated office world, but then I'm also the youngest. So it's like, how do I get the respect? And so that's where it just fed into the perfectionism. Like I got to
Mm-hmm.
prove myself right. I got to prove that I belong here. And so I can't be weak. I can't cry. I can't do this. And so it literally is, I was shaped by my environment and everything that was happening to me. And that was my protective blanket until eventually anxiety hits, panic attack hits, and eventually your body's telling you, wake up. This isn't the life that you need to live. And so thankfully, probably I want to say about 3 years ago or so, I finally took that step of like, okay, I'm seeing somebody. And that's where I went and I saw a therapist, and it was like mind blown, like, holy shit, this makes sense. This makes sense. And so literally it's been transformative for me because it's been so freeing. And of course you find people like Brene Brown, who's like killing the game, and like everybody's like, hell yeah, I'm being vulnerable. And so it's accepted now, and it's what people want. People don't want surface level stuff anymore. They want to connect to the human. Like, I want to know what's your skeleton in your closet. You know what I mean? That's what I'm going to connect with, because if I'm going to champion for you, if I'm going to work for you, what am I working for? You know, so unless you've been down in the trenches with me and you've gone through something, I don't know that I can like champion for you. So I think, like, again, I told you earlier when we first talked, it's about like converting those stories that you once thought were shameful, and now they become your power story. And so that's full circle, the whole perfectionist thing. But
no, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Especially because, like you said, we were talking about it. And I think there's definitely an example in there for folks that are listening, and maybe you've fallen on hard times, or you're still grinding, and you're just trying to figure out, like, man, like, I'm out of work, and what is the next step for me, and I have folks that depend on me, and you're worried about being uber polished in that interview, and you should definitely be prepared and be prepared to speak to your experience, but share your story, because I think now more than ever people really gravitate towards and this has always been the case, but I think it's more apparent now that people have always gravitated towards battle tested leadership, right? And just, okay, I know you've gone through some things, and so that gives me confidence in your ability to be able to handle adversity when it shows its face. And I love too the fact that you kind of talk about how freeing it was and how illuminating it was to just be able to confide in somebody and talk through those things. I can tell you, for me, it wasn't until I also went through therapy, and I had a total paradigm shift in terms of like, oh, I understand now why I do the things that I do, and I understand why I'm wired the way that I am. I understand why my currency of love is achievement, right? And why I need to do that. And ever since I've had that awakening, it's just been a complete paradigm shift, and I've been able to approach situations from just a different motivation. It's not for validation or affirmation, or coming from that place of, okay, I need another feather in my cap to show that I'm worthy of all the people that are around me and that believe in me. Like, yeah, you can still believe in me. I haven't let you down, right? I've been able to break out of that, but it took a minute. It took a minute. It took me being able to actually talk to somebody and look in the mirror and be confronted with those things. And it's just funny how the universe works, Jimmy. Like, we've been having kind of these seeds of conversations, on camera and off camera, as we confided in one another and stuff like that, man. And so to just hear it, through Day's story and her experiences, it's just another mirror and another reminder that, we're not in this battle alone, and that, coming to grips with those things can be liberating, it can be freeing, it can be a sign of true strength. The weakness is in trying to hold on to, these fallacies, but when you can come to grips with who you really are and overcome that, that's a sign of true strength. So I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that back up, Dave, for everything that Devon just said, because it's something that we have been talking about. And what I will say, hopefully we'll have more conversations. I can learn a little bit more about where you're at spiritually. Everything that you've gone through in your life and the story that you just shared, I mean, there's purpose in all of those things. And I think it's okay to be mad every once in a while, especially when you're confused and you don't understand. But knowing that, for me, I look back to my life and things that have happened, and how God has gotten me to this particular point. And like you said, how powerful it is to say, okay, now that either I've come to grips with it or I'm still learning, but as I share those stories with people, how just the impact that it has on other people's lives and what they can learn, or they can see that, I'm not the only one going through this, and it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to deal with these things. It's okay to get help and to speak to somebody. And it's okay, for men to be vulnerable and to share things with one another. And I just think it's so powerful, especially in this day and age, to be able to have those type of conversations and talk about those things and be vulnerable about that. So again, thank you for doing that. But no, I told Devon about this book that I'm reading called To Be Told. And as I'm going through that, it's talking about, shalom, right? And the peace that we have. But as that peace, kind of any story, right? When you're telling a really good story, it starts with peace, but then there's some type of shattering. There's some type of event and trauma, that we go through. You mentioned it, like all of those things affects us, and it affects who we are, and the environment and all of those things. So being able to, again, to talk about those things, to learn from those situations, and then to be able to share that with others is such a powerful thing to be able to do in somebody else's life. So again, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Seriously, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
So that was, kind of as we're talking, looking down a little bit and looking at the questions, I think that there was a lot of advice that you just shared, within that, about leadership and about yourself. And again, dealing with adversity and some of the things that individuals can do to work through some very challenging and tough times. I do want to give you an opportunity to kind of switch gears just a little bit and to give advice, not just on leadership. We've been talking about, maybe for that person who is digging in too hard and, feeling anxiety because they're trying and they're pushing too hard because they need that opportunity. They need that job. Any advice or tips that you'd like to give, to people out there who are in that space, who are looking for a job, whether they have one and maybe they're just not necessarily happy with the environment that they're in, or again, they've been furloughed, they've been let go for months. I heard of a story about a brother at church, and again, it's just in that situation, looking and coming onto hard times. So I'll stop there. Words of advice and tips.
I think first and foremost, I think it's just give yourself grace. We don't do that enough. And we're our worst critic. And, especially when you feel like, oh crap, I'm supposed to be the breadwinner. I'm supposed to be the role model. And all of a sudden you're knocked at your knees. And, your world just came crashing down. It's a lot to process. It's the same thing when my father had, a heart attack and then had to go right into open heart surgery. He went from being breadwinner to now disabled, not being able to work, can't work, not knowing where the money was going to come from. And so, it's tough, but you have to give yourself grace. You have to pull on to family, friends, people that don't go it alone. And I know it feels like you're weak and, it's embarrassing. That's what you feel, but that's shame. And, shame operates from that place of, just darkness. And really, I think when you open up and you tell people what you're going through to those that you're most close with, that gives you room to get it out of your chest. So it's out. And then now when you do those things that are supposed to lead, those actions that lead to the promising land, right? The opportunities and to get yourself back on your feet, you can really put full focus in those things. But if you don't take those things out, you're losing that focus and the clarity because now you're just operating from this, you have so much in your chest. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's like, you just need a good cry it out, vent, cry, scream if you need to, but get it out, because once you do that, then you can take action, and clarity comes from action. So don't be afraid to just take messy action. And if you're coming up wrong with stuff, just find someone. Don't be afraid to say, I need help. I'm not good at this, and that's the reason why I started the Professional Pantry, because people can't, the hardest thing you can do is sell yourself. People don't feel comfortable. They feel like it's being cocky or weird, and it's not. Embrace who you are. Have the confidence, what you can bring to the table. And it's okay if you need a therapist, a career coach, a life coach, what have you. Those are your people in your corner that's going to be rooting for you. And it's going to be that momentum that you need to keep going in those tough times. And I always say, when it comes to leadership or just in general life, being a good anyone can ever do for themselves, it's the mama mentality of your constant quest of you have. Because if not, then you're just stagnant and you're just not self-aware to where you can improve. And so don't leave things to fate. You have to take action. So that's my piece of advice there. I know there's a tons of nuggets there, but just don't do it alone. Do what you need to get it off your chest, get help, and then just take messy action. It'll happen.
So no, I appreciate that. Like you said, definitely a lot of nuggets from a little bit more of a tactical perspective. I know there were some resources that you shared with me. So if I wanted to get some resources, some free resources, to be able to maybe help me with, really crafting out a better resume and things like that, where could our listeners go to get some of the resources that you share with individuals?
Sure. So if you head over to the Professional Pantry, so like your kitchen pantry, right? So theprofessionalpantry.com. Then on the homepage, there's a couple of freebies I have, but I would say for the person who's looking for a job, who's in this kind of like, kind of weird spot, the best guide I would say is the free job search strategy guide. It's long, but literally it's going to take you step by step. Like, get the clarity first. What are you targeting? So target the right role, then target the right company, and then do your stuff like applying, networking, and stuff. Don't start applying blindly everywhere. First, get that clarity, and then once you know what you're going for, and then how you're applicable to that. Now you're ready to put yourself in that position to go out to the game. It's like, put me in, coach. Now I know what I'm doing. And so that is what the guide does, is it helps you kind of answer some of those questions to bring the clarity. And then the things to think about, like get your ducks in a row, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, how to network, where to tap into. So those are just some suggestions there that the guide provides. And then obviously if you need additional help, you can always reach out to me. I help with both on the career coaching side of things for more clarity or interview preparation, or the service packages that I have, which is more so on like the resume, custom resumes, and then LinkedIn profiles. So that's it.
And where can people find you on LinkedIn?
On LinkedIn, you'll find me as Daylyn Perez. That's my full, real, legal name. And that's Daylyn as in Nancy, and then Perez, Perez.
And then there's also a page for the Professional Pantry as well, correct?
Okay. Yes, on LinkedIn, yes.
Awesome, awesome. Devon, any last words?
No, man. I'm just I'm thankful for the opportunity to hear more about Day's story, and man, just again, there's just so many notes of inspiration and encouragement, and I think a lot of folks need to hear that, especially in these times. And it gives you, for me, if I was, in the position where I'm looking, it would give me an abundance of confidence to be able to partner or work with somebody like you, as a career coach, and just kind of, providing some guidance on how to navigate this new environment, knowing that you have, again, just this well of resolve and adversity that you've been able to overcome, that I can find some comfort in, because obviously, again, these things aren't easy. You touched on some of the things that, you feel when you find yourself in that situation, because even with me having the clarity about what I wanted to do, and being in a better place mentally, right? Like when I got furloughed, it was definitely still a knock at the knees. It's like, okay, I'm the primary breadwinner, and I have to reorient myself, right? I have to recenter myself. I have to, all right, get back to my my place of power, before I go out there and just literally apply for everything that says open, right? And so, just to kind of hear your story, and then to hear you share, some of the free resources that are currently available, and more so than like the tactical stuff. 'Cause I think there's a wealth of resources out there from a tactical perspective, and if you need additional resources or help, or they definitely should reach out and connect with a professional. I love the fact that you spoke to the mindset perspective before you even start tackling the tactical. Like, you have to operate from the right place, and whether that's talking to somebody, getting it out, kind of that catharsis of just, okay, all right, now I have this clarity, and let me reorient myself and go from there. I think it's extremely encouraging, because I think a lot of times when folks find themselves in that situation, our instinct is to bottle up, is to clam up, and to try and use that angst, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. We try to use that as fuel for action, but that, one, it can be poor fuel, and two, it can just be misplaced and cause you to just not be as effective or thoughtful as you should be. And so it's good to just kind of hold up that mirror to folks and say, look, hey, It's okay. Get it out get it off your chest. Like, it's okay to take like a couple of days and just work through how you feel emotionally. And then once you're in a good place emotionally, then let's start talking about the tactical. And also understand that now that you have clarity on what you want, you don't necessarily have to wait for perfection to start taking action. Take messy action and then learn from that, refine, and ask for help if you need it. So, no, man, this is, again, another really strong, MBA experience for me. Being able to bring on another professional and just learn from your story, man. This has been awesome.
Awesome, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, we definitely appreciate just being real with us and sharing your stories and, some very telling and deep stories as well. Very personal stories. So yeah, D, you pretty much, wrapped up a lot of the nuggets that we spoke about. So I appreciate that. Again, for our legacy leaders, number one, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and stop and subscribe. Hit the alert bell. Make sure, yes, that you always know when we're dropping the new hotness and the videos are out there. We're on all major podcast platforms, so that's where you prefer to get the content. Then subscribe there as well, so that you're always getting those downloads. So I'm gonna make sure this time that day is ready. I'm leading by example.
I got myself purdy. Hold on.
Bam. Number two, take a screenshot. Whether you're watching us on a YouTube channel or if you're listening on a podcast, take a screenshot of the episode, what you're listening to, what you're watching, and then go to Instagram. Go ahead and post that on Instagram and tag us on Instagram, please. And the reason we're asking it again is, and we love having these conversations. Again, this has just been a tremendous amount of value in my life, and I know in yours, D, as well, that our listeners are going to get out there. But we like to get that feedback and know that you're feeling hopefully the same way that we're feeling as we're having these conversations. So go ahead and, again, take those snapshots, post it on Instagram, tag us, Coach_Jimmie G Jr., at Leadership Docent, and then at Daylyn Perez. Tag us, and obviously at Legacy Leadership as well, so that we know that you're listening, that you're viewing, and that you're getting something. Leave comments. Again, let us know some of the nuggets that really resonated with you the most. We certainly appreciate that. And then step number 3, share. Sharing is caring. Share with your friends, share with your family, share with other leaders that need or just would desire, again, to learn more about what it takes to become a leader worth following. Especially this episode, we're talking about being vulnerable, being open, and some of the hardships and tragedies that we go through, and how important it is to have that support system, and to even have a professional, have a coach, have somebody, a counselor that you're going to. Maybe somebody that finds themselves in those situations, but they're not having those conversations, but that those feelings are there. Share this with them. I'm sure they'll be able to get a lot, even if it's just, again, knowing I'm not alone, and it's okay. It's okay. So again, please share. We definitely appreciate that. Again, thank you, Day. Over 10 years of experience in HR and recruiting. Yes, senior recruiter for VHB and co-founder of the Professional Pantry. Absolutely. This has been a pleasure, and we will definitely make sure that we leave links as well in our notes for the folks listening and viewing, so they'll have access to that too. Thank you again. We appreciate your time and spending this evening with us, and again, sharing your story. Thank you to our listeners out there, our legacy leaders. We appreciate you guys very much. Until next time, I forgot to say, next time, in the next episode, we're going to start talking about some specific pillars that as leaders really should be the foundation of a leader. And again, if you're trying to be a leader worth following, these are going to be some really strong pillars that you're going to want to learn about, that you're going to want to hear about, and start implementing in your day-to-day activities as a leader and with your team. And all of that will be leading us up to the next MBA episode as we kind of tie a bow on that series as well. So that is the end.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
We appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
All right, legacy leaders, God bless and stay encouraged, everybody. Take care.
Take care.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, hosted by Jimmy Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you live, lead, and lead a a legacy worth remembering. Until next time.